Greetings and welcome. Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings of love, joy from the Most High, Allah, or God in the Aramaic. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we bring you the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but that truth, not hype, fluff, or other nonsense. Today, we are asking the question, who are the real Jews? And this may be perhaps over a series of several videos to follow. For there are many movements or cults who claim that they are the real Jews, such as the US Hebrew Israelites and the many breakaways. These are the ICUPK, the ICGJC, etc. They claim, or they make claims such as everyone in the Bible, from Moses to Jesus, were black. Even Socrates, Mozart, King James, etc. were black. So, on our quest to find out who really are the true Jews, we came across a certain website online which reads, at 7 PM on a cold Thursday night, two SUVs with Maryland plates pull into a CVS parking lot at Florida Avenue and 7th Street NW, I guess that's northwest. Half a dozen men in brightly coloured robes emerge and begin to assemble a makeshift pulpit around a black wooden platform. Across the street, the go-go music blasting from a cell phone store suddenly goes silent. Someone flips the switch on a little generator and two industrial lights flash on, casting a blinding halo around the men gathered by the stage. A tall man in red and gold steps to the mic. His voice booms above the roar of traffic. "Hello, Washington, D.C., he yells. "We are the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. We are the true biblical and ethnic Jews. According to the ICGJC, everything you've been taught is a lie. The real Jews are black. The true Hebrews of the Bible, from the 12 tribes of Jacob's sons on through the generation to Jesus and to those who came after, all had skin as dark as the earth. Some of the tribes travelled to the New World by boat, where they are now represented by the native peoples of the Caribbean and North and South America. Others fled from the Roman army and settled in Africa, where they would one day be sold as slaves by the nations whose lands they had occupied. Black Jews ruled the world from ancient times until the Enlightenment. King Tut and Socrates were black Hebrews, and centuries later many of their kin survived Rome's terror and rose to prominence in Europe. Shakespeare, King Arthur, Mozart, all were black and Jewish. White people have rewritten history, obscuring the true identity of God's chosen people and erasing the evidence of the accomplishments of the world. This is according to the ICGJC. These are the lies the ICGJC is trying to set straight, one street corner at a time. It may seem like a Sisyphean task, but the ICGJC are not as few or as marginal as they may appear. They belong to the black Israelite tradition, a broad and not very chummy category of semi-Christian, semi-Jewish congregations that believe that the real chosen people are black. Through various permutations, the ideology has lasted for more than a century. In the United States, weathering failed attempts to gain Israeli citizenship. The Jews of Israel say they are not Jews, they're not true Jews, so they won't give them Israeli citizenship. Because to be a true Jew, you must follow all the traditions, customs, rites, etc. Or to be a true Hebrew, you need to follow all of those Jewish traditions. But a lot of these groups don't. Scholars estimate there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of black Hebrews in the United States, while the various groups put their numbers in the millions. Well, they're trying to find their roots, their identity, right? Their lost identity. In Washington, black Israelites have already drawn attention for their activities on 8th Street Northeast, where a group calling itself the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge inspired one resident to start a blog devoted to noise complaints. This author first noticed the ICGJC one night in January at the Georgia Ave Petworth Metro stop. The church members had set up their stage, and placards just down from the drug dealers who hang out by the escalators. The author decided to go up and satisfy his curiosity. He introduced himself as a journalist to one of the combat-booted men standing sentry. His reluctance to talk is palpable. He looks at the author through lowered lashes and keeps turning around as if he hopes someone else will come take over. He says they might be interested in doing an article and hands the author a flyer before bowing out. The sheet is choked with text and decorated with lions and a Star of David. Bold-faced questions are answered with the Bible verses, such as, are the so-called Negroes in America Africans? No, they are the real Hebrew African Israelites, Jews. So they're denying their African roots. Okay. Read Exodus 11:7, that ye may know that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. The real Jews are black, referring to people of brown colour. Okay, the real Jews are black, referring to people of brown colour, according to the Bible. Read Jeremiah 14:2. Judah mourneth in sorrow as the leaders thereof languish, grow weaker. They are black unto the ground, many different shades of brown. Okay, so we decided to have a look at the verse, Exodus 11:7, using the so-said original, ancient or very old, sacred, scribal, old tongue or language, the Lesshaha Ateeqa of the Assyrian-Aramaic or Syrian-Aramaic, or the original, ancient or very old Ktav or Ktav Ashuri, which is the sister language of the original, ancient, very old Hebrew or Ktav Ivri. And these Old Testament manuscripts were copied by scribes and monks in Urhai, Edessa, now modern Turkey, around 800 to 900 BCE. This Lesshaha Ateeqa Supraya was the language spoken by the Old Testament prophets and also these scribes and monks. So, as we said, we'll have a look at that verse, Exodus chapter 11, verse 7, and it reads, and from the house of Israel neither will a dog utter a sound, nor a human being, nor a four-legged creature, so as you may know that the Lord shall distinguish between the Egyptians and the Israelites. And here's the footnotes here. 11:7:1, literal Aramaic idiom, retained. Israelites, the house of Israel, Israelites. 11:7:2, literal Aramaic idiom, separate. 11:7:3, literal Aramaic idiom, house of Israel. So what it's saying here is, and from the house of Israel, or Israelites, neither will a dog utter a sound, nor a human being, nor a four-legged creature, so as you may know that the Lord shall separate between the Egyptians and Israelites. He'll separate them. He'll separate the house of Israel from the Egyptians, so you'd know who were Egyptians and you'd know who were the Israelites. It doesn't say anything there about them being black. And Moses and Aaron demonstrated these differences before the Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, so he would not send the children of Israel from his land. Okay. Okay, because the Lord said to Moses, the Pharaoh or the king of Egypt did not listen to you, because the difference. We'll go from here. And verse 8, and all these servants of yours shall come to me, and they shall worship me. That's the house of Israel. And they shall say to me, or God, Allah, go out, you and this entire nation with you. So, in other words, walk out of Egypt, go on to Exodus. That is when I shall go out. And Moses left the presence of the Pharaoh in great anger, because he said, let my people go, and he wouldn't. And the Lord said to Moses, the Pharaoh or the king did not listen to you, because the differences I made in the land of Egypt have increased in number. The difference is when he separates the Egyptians, the house of Israel, from the Egyptians or the Israelites. And Moses and Aaron demonstrated these differences before the king, and the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king. God did that. So he would not send the children of Israel from his land. Okay. That's what God did, right? Okay, so there's nothing about him being black, with them being black. Nothing there at all in the original scriptures from 800 BCE. Okay. So go back to the article. Read Jeremiah 14:2. So we have a look at that. Judea mourns, its gates have been pierced and have fallen to the ground, and the cries of Jerusalem have risen high. Okay. Okay, it says Judah mourneth in sorrow as the leaders thereof languish, grow weaker. They are black unto the ground. Many different shades of brown. We'll look at it again. Judea mourns, its gates have been pierced and have fallen to the ground, and the cries of Jerusalem have risen high. Sorry, it doesn't say that they were black. Okay. That's in the original, ancient, very old, sacred scribal old tongue, Lesshaha Ateeqa Supraya of the Ktav Ashuri, the Assyrian-Aramaic or Assyrian-Aramaic from 800 BCE. So these are from the original manuscripts, translated into English, the nearest English equivalent, and staying as true to what the original scriptures actually say. So there's no twisting it, etc., etc., okay, as most translators do, because this particular translator, N. Alexander, stated in his mission statement that that's what he wanted to do, was to translate the original scriptures into English for Christians, etc., in the nearest English equivalent. Sometimes it's hard to find that word in the Aramaic in the English, so he has to go searching for one, such as the example of Multa. There's no English equivalent, so he came across a word called manifestation, something that was revealed. It was hidden and then it was suddenly revealed, brought to light, i.e. God was never seen by anyone. He was known but he wasn't seen ever. So he who dwelt in the midst of God, Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, was God incarnate in the flesh, so men could see God, look upon God and not die. According to scriptures, anyone who looked upon God saw him in his purity, his gloriousness, etc., because he's a light, he's too bright, you would die. Okay. So it does not say there that they were black. Okay. Back to this article. Okay, so this author sends emails to the address on the flyer. He calls the listed number and leaves messages. No one responds. He visits the website, a spiffy page that advertises meetings at Washington DC or DC public libraries nearly every night of the week. After a few weeks of radio silence, he shows up unannounced in a small room on the second floor of the Martin Luther King Library. A man with a suitcase on wheels listens stone-faced as he introduces himself. His name, he learns later, is Rahab or Raymond Washington. He pulls out his cell. Make note of that, because this is the first guy he met, is Rahab or Raymond Washington. He pulls out his cell, dials the number, and hands the author the phone. As the man on the other end introduces himself as Bishop War Amathya, the author tells him he's a journalist and wants to sit in on the meeting. That's fine, he says, and he hands the phone back to Washington. The author hands the phone back to Washington. He listens, nods a few times, and hangs up. Then he looks the author over and asks where he's from. Oregon, the author says. No, he says, I mean, where are your people from? The author states he thinks he sees where he's going and explains that he's a quarter Mexican. Oh, which side? He asks. He has the right answer. The author has the right answer. My father and my father's father. With that, his invitation is confirmed. The Mexican people are Jews, you see, the 12th of the 12 lost tribes of Israel. It makes no matter that he's 3/4 heathen. Contrary to the traditional Jewish law of matrilineal descent, the Israelites believe the seed comes from the man. Well, yeah, biologically it does, doesn't it? In the session, the woman just fertilizes that seed or that egg, right? In the session, the author learns some basic tenets of the ICGJC. Most of it is following the rules, because sex equals marriage. Polygamy is permitted, so they can have more than one wife, even encouraged, for men only. Contraception is banned. Members follow some kosher restrictions: no pork, no shellfish. Smoking is prohibited, it's not allowed. Moderate drinking is allowed, so they drink the scotch, etc. as one of their leaders of the ICPUK, is it? Or ICUPK? I forgot his name. He's on the House of Consciousness. He, on his travels, bought himself a bottle of scotch. They celebrate high holy days and believe Jesus was the Son of God from a virgin birth. ICGJC members say that they speak an ancient dialect of Hebrew called Lesshaha Ateeqa. Okay, you have to look that up. Which resembles modern Israeli Hebrew, with all the vowels sounds except A and I removed. Mostly they use the language for greetings, prayers, and themselves Hebrew names. Okay, so it resembles a modern Israeli Hebrew. It's like it. If you ask about the history of their religion, the Israelites invariably respond to a different question. We go back to the time of Moses and the wilderness, they'll say. Or they'll say that their organisation isn't a religion at all, but a race living in a diaspora, or a division, right? They've been scattered, separated, right? To the four winds, to put in a way. Right? Yeah. Black Hebrew ideology has its roots, most likely with slaves' first encounters with Christianity. Early sermons led by slaves and freemen often focused on the books of the Old Testament, particularly accounts of Jewish oppression in Egypt. Stories of surviving pharaohs or kings of Egypt cruelty probably resonated more than the miracles of the New Testament, especially for a people suffering under modern day slavery with no Moses in sight. Imagery borrowed from the Jewish experience pervades black culture in the New World. From Martin Luther King's "I've Seen the Promised Land" to Desmond Decker's 1968 scar at the Israelites. It wasn't until the turn of the 20th century that the identification with Jews transformed into claims of actual kinship. The first groups to claim heredity between blacks in America and the biblical Jews emerged more than 100 years ago, starting in the south and moving to northern cities along the routes of black migration. They advocated an ideology that reclaimed biblical salvation for themselves and denied the Christian religion of their oppressors. Adam and Eve were black, as were God and Jesus. The white Jews were impostors, and the white race was cursed. The groups grew steadily in the early 20th century, establishing churches in Virginia, New York, and Philadelphia with thousands of members. The movement surged again in the 1960s and 70s, with several new groups that espoused a more stridently separatist doctrine. One Chicago sect, relocated a chunk of its congregation to Israel, where members have been allowed to join the National Defense Forces. Another group, the Nation of Yahweh in Miami, has been labeled as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Today, the various sects of Hebrew Israelites have vastly different theologies, from strict emulations of Orthodox Jewish traditions and beliefs to a sort of hybrid Christianity in which Jesus is the Saviour, but the laws of the Old Testament still stand. The ICGJC occupies the latter end of the spectrum. The church has its roots in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, which was founded in New York City in the 1960s. In the late 1980s, the group replaced school with church. In a bid, according to some accounts, to get tax-exempt status, ICGJC members say there was just a split in the organisation. A decade later, elders began preaching that the world would end on January 1st, 2000. Usually these things are prophesied or predicted, and it doesn't come about. When nothing happens, one group of former members reorganised as the ICGJC. Soon a new leader, a man known as Apostle and Chief High Priest Tazadakia, who believes he's inhabited by the Holy Spirit and calls himself the Comforter. Oh, okay, that could be blasphemy. The ICGJC claims to have hundreds of thousands of members, which may seem far-fetched for a group whose expansion into DC relies on a dozen or so men preaching at street corners. But there are signs the church is more than a ramshackle operation. A MySpace-style social networking site with hundreds of profiles, enough money to pay for the Comforter's recent world tour to Dallas, Philadelphia and other cities east of the continental divide, plus audio-visual equipment, travel expenses, the production of a weekly cable access television show and upkeep and rent for 2 campuses in New York and Baltimore. It just reminded us of one of those leaders, maybe of the ICP UK, Captain Tazariak, on House of Consciousness, saying he travelled maybe to Israel and he came back and he bought himself a bottle of scotch. So yeah, they allow drinking. Okay, it's evident on the video opening of the video, a conversation between Captain Tazariak and House of Consciousness's Sarnilla. Check that out on YouTube. The street unit is the keystone of the ICGJC's plans to find a permanent home here. About a dozen men visit DC each week to speak the word at the Petworth Metro in Anacostia or a Florida Avenue. Okay, it's Clifford Jean, also known as Bishop Ma'awa. Yeah, that sounds like Ma'at, an Egyptian? Don't know, not too sure now. If you got it from there. Clifford Jean, whose Hebrew name is Ma'awa Amathia, is the Bishop of DC and the person that this author spoke to on the phone back at the library. Unlike the group's foot soldiers, none of whom would talk to the author, Jean is jovial and polite, eager to answer questions about the ICGJC. But Jean, 35, is a little shy. We were not talking about religion. This author can pry out only a few details from him. He lives in Silver Spring, he says, with his wife and their 10 children. Busy man. He says he was raised by his father, a Haitian immigrant who worked as a mechanic in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and supported the family with little or to no help from Jean's mother. Jean went to the Catholic Church occasionally and loved to draw. He states he just had a regular childhood. He says, I went to school and I did what I had to do. I didn't get in too much trouble, just an ordinary kid. After graduating from the High School of Graphic Communication Arts, a vocational school in Manhattan, he enrolled in graphic arts program at John Jay College in Brooklyn. He didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, he says, because he didn't like the grease. But after a year of school, he dropped out and took a job in building security which is still his trade. Gene discovered the Israelites the way most people do, by accident. On his way home from work, he saw a group of men preaching near the corner of 44th Street and Broadway. He was transfixed by their poise. He states, he guessed it was the way they dressed, he says, the way they stood so stiff before the Lord. Oh, he was like, wow, these guys look amazing. Gene stopped and listened to what the men had to say. They showed him how things he'd learned at school were lies. The light of the truth drew him in. It was factual, he says. That's what got him interested, the truth. He said he found truth for himself one Saturday at the Petworth Library, where the ICGJC is holding a 4-hour seminar called From Kings to Slaves. Before the session starts, a dozen men rush around making coffee and piling food. Okay, this is the author talking here. He says he found truth for himself one Saturday at the Petworth Library, where the ICGJC is holding held a 4 seminar called From Kings to Slaves. Before the session starts, a dozen men rush around making coffee and piling food. Fried chicken from Popeyes, bagels and cream cheese, snack-sized bags of potato chips on a long table in a chilly basement. Ooh, very healthy. Is it following the dietary laws of the Old Testament? Maybe they're relaxed on that one. There is a jovial air to the preparations. The men ask after one another's families. Concerned, obviously. Love for the brothers, right? How are your people doing? The twins, they alright? A Change Is Gonna Come by Otis Redding plays over and over on a laptop connected to a PV amp.